Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So that's Welcome to round 3 of Introductions in Japanese from Duolingo. Can you believe it? 3 sections teaching us how to introduce ourselves. I hope you're not shy, or else all of this will be pretty useless. どうも、こんにちは。髪型素敵ですね。
ありがとうございます。日本語話せますか?
In this section, you're going to learn how to state where you live, how old you are, what grade you're in, and how to state groups of people rather than just a single person. We have much to discuss, so grab a cup of coffee, a pen, and some paper because we are about to get started. I'd also like to mention, for those of you in a hurry, I've created section markers in the description below for you to click around and jump to specific questions, examples, and explanations. However, I still suggest that you watch this video front to back as it's full of golden nuggets. Let's now get started with how to say where you live. I'd be careful who you share this one with. The phrase to state where you live is really quite simple. However, if you're anything like me, you may have been confused on one particular variation of this phrase. So, allow me and Chisa to clear this all up for you. Canada ni sundemasu. I live in Canada. Let's begin with the structure of this phrase. First comes the location, marked with the ni particle, as ni is generally used to mark locations or time. Then we end off the phrase with sundemasu, meaning to live in. Canada ni sundemasu. Now before we continue here, I already have a question on this phrase to clarify. In the phrase Canada ni sundemasu, why is imasu used? Doesn't this mean to have or there is?
Yeah, so yes it is. It kind of has the meaning of to have or there is. When you hear iru or imasu right after verb, it always shows a current action. So for example, in this sentence it says カナダに住んでいます and the います comes right after 住んで.
Now that you know how to state where you live, let's take a look at one more variation that kept coming up with this phrase. I had trouble figuring this one out. So let's take a look. Canada niwa sundemasu. I live in Canada. Notice the difference here. Canada niwa sundemasu. What's the deal with the added wa in this phrase?
Oh hi, you cold? Well, this wa particle implies there is other comparison. So when you say カナダには住んでいます, it implies that you live in Canada but not somewhere else that mentioned in this conversation.
Now I apologize, as I usually like to leave on a high note. However, I must get a bit negative now as I need to wrap up this phrase and show you how to state you do not live somewhere. So check this out. Canada ni sunde imasen. I do not live in Canada. See how easy that was? Same exact phrase as the positive version. The only change here is using the negative form of imasu, which, as we all should know by now, is imasen, officially making this statement negative. Done deal. Let's move on. The next phrase we will look at now is how to state how old you are and ask someone else their age. Let's begin with the question. Nensei desu ka? How old are you? Short and sweet. Nensei, meaning what age. Nani by itself means what, and this also changes to be pronounced as just nan when other words come right after, as in nensei. Now sai is what's known as a counter, that when added after a number specifies that number to be an age. And of course, desu ka is the des sentence ender in question form. Now you'll notice the subject you, as in how old are you, is omitted from this question. You should be familiar by now with the fact that in Japanese, the subject is often omitted, keeping this phrase, as I said, short and sweet. Going back to the sai counter, you will notice some variations on how numbers are pronounced when using this counter. For example, isai is how to say 1 year old, rather than ichisai, ichi meaning 1, sai meaning years old. Now, this turns into isai with the sai counter. Now there's no magic formula here on learning how this works, other than lots of repetition and review. Welcome to counting in Japanese. Now that you can ask the question, how old are you, let's see how you can answer this question by stating your age, using the sai counter. 29 歳です. I am 29 years old. Well, that wasn't too hard, was it? Simply state your age, followed with sai to clarify the number stated as your age. Then follow it with des to finish the statement. Easy. Altogether you have age plus sai plus des. Magic formula. Done. Moving right along to the next key phrases in this section that allow you to state what grade you're in and what type of student that you are. Now before we get into the full phrases, let's quickly review the vocabulary in this section that you will need to actually make these phrases. Here we go. Student, gakusei. Elementary school, shougaku. Middle school, chugaku. High school, koko. University, daigaku. Foreigner, like me, gaikokujin. And finally, foreign exchange student, ryugakusei. Can you remember all that? I hope so, because we are about to build some phrases using them, starting with how to state what kind of student you are or are not. Boku wa ryugakusei desu. I am a foreign exchange student. Simply put, the structure of this phrase is subject plus wa plus type of student plus des. Now in most cases you would generally omit the subject, especially if you had been asked the question, are you a student? So this should more likely be just ryugakusei desu, type of student followed with des. No need to restate you, the subject, as you had been asked. I think this omission thing is finally making sense. Now as always, to flip this to a negative statement, all we need to do is turn our sentence ender des into its negative form, dewa arimasen. And now we have ryugakusei dewa arimasen. I am not a foreign exchange student. Let's now get into stating what grade you're in. I also have seen variations of this phrase, so I will need to get some clarifications on this as well. But first off, let's cover the basics, starting with the question. Nensei desu ka? What grade are you in? As you can see, this phrase is quite short. Nensei meaning what grade, plus desu ka meaning a question. That's all there is to it. Nensei desu ka? Let's now see how to answer this question. Now this is one area that troubled me, as the example shown in Duolingo had two variations. So let's cover both of these variations while clarifying the differences with our lovely Japanese helper. Variation 1. Yonensei desu. I am a fourth grader. Now this is the example that actually made sense to me. Number of grade, yon as in 4, plus nensei meaning grade, plus of course desu. I am in the fourth grade. Yonensei desu. Now you may also notice in this phrase, yon for the number 4 turns into yo with this counter. Now this is simply just because without this, there would be too many n's in this case. You'll notice the more you get into counting, there are many slight tweaks to Japanese numbers, so as I always say, practice makes perfect. Now, let's move on to variation 2, which I don't quite yet understand. Koko ni nensei desu. I am a second year in high school. As you can see, this structure begins with the type of school plus number of grade plus nensei meaning grade plus desu. And my question is, but why? Why when stating what grade you're in, you would start with the type of school plus the number of year and such? How does this work?
It's just because Japanese school system is different. In Japan, we have kindergarten, elementary school, junior high school, and high school. And all the schools are totally separated. Once you are done with the elementary school, you will be a first grade of junior high school. And once you're done with the junior high school, and then you'll be a brand new first grade in high school. So if you just happen to say, oh, I'm in grade 1, then we don't know which school you are in.
Now I'm just guessing at this point, but does nensei mean what grade?
Yes, it means grade. However, keep in mind that nensei itself doesn't work, so you always need to have a number before nensei.
How would you state what grade you're in Japanese most commonly?
So always you say school type first, which grade you are in, and nensei. But you can also make it short, just like shoni, chuni, koni. Did you pick any kind of word beside the number, which is 2, ni? So what I did was just I took only the first word of school type and then grade. So for example, shoni, which is supposed to be shogakko 2年生, so I removed the nensei as well, and then also 小学校, yeah, 学校, so I left the sho and then ni, and then that's all, much shorter than English.
And with that, I think we just got schooled, gang. Next up, let's take a look at one modification that you can add to a statement that will make a huge difference. Ready for this one? Tachi, singular to plural. When you see tachi placed after a noun such as gakusei tachi, it turns this noun into a group. So instead of just saying gakusei meaning student, when tachi is used, it means students. Now let's dig into this phrase a little deeper now. Can tachi only be used for nouns such as people, or can it be used for other things?
Yeah, so basically, I think you can only use it for living things, including human, but mainly we use it for human.
Is tachi commonly used, and if so, how do you use it?
Yeah, it is. It's mostly used to describe a big number of people like 子供たち, meaning children. You could also say 大人たち, meaning adult.
Now, one of the biggest limitations when learning a new language is just adding personality to the way that you speak. As when you only know the basics, you can't really get silly or creative with how you speak.
そうです。
そうです. So let's work on building up that personality of yours by looking at 3 sentence enders covered in this section that you can use to add just a little bit more expression to the way that you speak. Example 1, yo.
Yo, yo. How yo is used is just to show our statement more clearly, like clearly and I think a little bit more casual. So for example, like to say, oh, it's wrong or it's different in Japanese. Simply you could say 違います. But then saying someone, oh, this is wrong is quite powerful. And even makes me feel a little bit awkward to say that. So in order to make it sound softer, I would put yo after 違います. 違いますよ? You know, right? Yeah, so you also includes the meaning, right? I know you know that it's wrong.
Moving on to the next sentence ender, ne. Let's see what Chisa has to say on this one.
Most commonly, it is used to suggest a casual confirmation or agreement for what you state. So for example, on Facebook, we all have like button. But in Japanese, or in Japan, we have ine button. I means good, but when you hear ne, it means oh, I like it. Don't you think so? So it's more like kind of like warmly, like friendly, encouraging to say the same things. We can't just say good, I as our own opinion. We just need to also have other people also think like just I do by putting ne, I ne, don't you think so, type things.
Whoa, 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 Duolingo. Slow down a minute here. The next example taught actually combines these two together. That's right, yo plus ne, yo ne. How much personality can one give? Well, before I can answer that question, I guess it would help to know what this one actually means.
The difference between just like using yo or ne and using yo ne together is when you place yo ne after the sentence, it's always kind of asking. So for example, to ask, to say, are you going right? I will say, 行きますよね? So I'm just kind of suggesting that, yeah, you going, right? You should be going. Also, one more example, just to say, is it right? そうですよね? So そうです means yes, or it is right. But when you say そうですよね, it's like, isn't it right? Yeah, so whenever you use ne, I feel like I just need to tilt my head a little bit to go underneath of a person mentally so that this person feels respected.
Before we wrap up this section, I can't leave out the other 2 random phrases that came up from time to time. The first phrase meaning, that is wrong, and the second phrase meaning, what's the difference? Now let's get Chisa back in here, as I'm sure that she can do a better job of explaining these 2 than this guy Kokujin.
違いますよ. 違いますよ means it is wrong, but it sounds very soft. chigao is a verb to mean to be wrong or to be different. And with the sentence end masyo, this verb changes to chigai and masyo to come after. I think there's not quite clear word to mean to be wrong in Japanese. So that things that is wrong is different from what's right, which is different. I might have made it sound very complicated. So simply, 違いますよ means that it's wrong, but very soft.
違いは何ですか? What's the difference?
Oh yeah, so simply it means what is the difference? As I mentioned, 違い as a noun means difference. So how would I use it? I could use like 日本語と英語の違いは何ですか? Meaning, what is the difference between Japanese and English?
Congratulations on making it through all 3 introduction modules in Duolingo Japanese. Now, if you enjoyed this video or have found this series to be helpful, it would really make myself and Chisa very happy, joyous, and also motivated. If you would like to take a second to share this series, like this video, and just leave us a comment or question below so that we can address your specific questions even further. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video in this series where we will be covering the counting section within Duolingo Japanese. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that this will be the final section within the entire section 1 of Duolingo? Would you look at that? Our first checkpoint! Arigatou gozaimasu for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.